Welcome to day 3 session. So today we are covering the second stage or a step in our design thinking process, which is define. Basically in the first stage, the empathize, you already collected a good amount of data and you studied about the issue, and here you state your users' need or problem. In the sense, you try to define the problem which you are planning to solve. So what is that issue, or what is that area of worry you're going to provide solution? That's what you're going to define. So it's all about kind of writing a brief and writing a problem statement. There is a way to do it, and there are a few techniques which we follow. So we are going to cover in this particular section 2 tools which I'm going to introduce you. One is that clustering thoughts is a one technique which is used to cluster your ideas in groups so that you start seeing what are those main problem areas or things needs to be addressed or issues needs to be addressed. And then there is another tool which I'm going to share with you, LATCH, which is called latch. So it's again organization tool. So when you do observation, interview, when you go and study the problem, you kind of get a lot of data points, okay? Through empathy mapping, you already got good amount of data. You saw that what people do, what people feel, what people say, and what people think. So you got these data for all the 4 things. Now we need to kind of channelize that data and start seeing what are those core issues. And we go deep into those data points and try to understand what's the real problem. Because consumer may not articulate the real problem. He might tell a few issues what he or she facing, but that may not be the real issue. There might be something real issue. There might be some social psychology or psychology or behavior or cultural. There could be a very different reason why they're not comfortable with the product or service. Okay, so as an innovator, like as a thinker who provides solutions, it's our responsibility to identify, define what is that problem they're really facing. And once you identify what problem you are planning to solve, then automatically you kind of move on to your next step, wherein you ideate, you kind of come up with solution. Okay, so let's look at how to define. Okay, so one tool which I'm sharing with you today, which is called clustering thought. Okay, so what is clustering thought? Our dictionary mean clustering is basically grouping or bringing similar kind of objects together. Okay, so in the clustering, there's a technical word we called affinity clustering. So that is where there is some kind of similar pattern between something, then if you try to identify what are those 4 or 3 or 2 clusters, and then the related data points, you try to put it in those buckets or those columns. So let's do this very simple exercise to understand what is clustering. Okay, so these are our data point. You know that here, what you can see here, of course you can see colors, and you can see good number of shapes: circle, half circle, square, triangle, star. Okay, and then I can see a big star and a small star, red star and a blue star and a green star. Okay, so if I want to cluster this data, there are 3 ways I can do that. One is that I can keep one affinity subject or one attribute, which is shape. So look at this data point and look at from if you want to segregate this data on the basis of shapes, probably we can do like this. Yeah, there is circular shape, highly distinctive to your star shape. Then we have a square. Okay, circular, star, square. Yes, of course, I can kind of have triangle or other thing also. Just I'm trying to use a few of them over here. So you can see circle, star, square, triangle, hexagon. You can have half circle like that. You can have. Okay. Another, if I take a size, yes, of course, I have a small kind of. Then this is, and compared to this is the largest. This is the smallest. It's somewhere in between. So that means I have a large, medium, and a small. So now I am using only one attribute, which is size. I'm not worried about the shapes or a color. I'm just keeping one attribute, that is size. So when I'm using a size as an affinity cluster topic, I can segregate like this. If I keep my affinity cluster title color, how do I segregate them? Clearly you can see there are 3 dominant colors: red, blue, green, red, blue, green. So I hope you started understanding that. So when you do research, you will get data points. Okay, you're asking or you're taking interview with a 10 prospective consumer, and each of them are giving some their thoughts or their likes and dislikes and whatnot. So now what you need to do is that once you collect all that data, you'll put all that data on a post-it, okay? And then you will start using affinity cluster. You try to have a 3, 4, or 5 clusters and make a title for each cluster, like the way we did for shape, size, color. In that case, it would be slightly different. Subject to subject, it varies. So once you made a cluster, within the cluster you have a minor cluster like red, blue, green. Okay, color cluster, 3 clusters. So you have 3 to 4 clusters. Within that you try to put all the data. Okay, I will show you one example in the following slides. Let's go for it. Affinity cluster, of course, either you do interview and observe, you collect a lot of data point. That's one way. Another way you can do is that you conduct a brainstorming session on a subject, then you collect data points. I believe that most of you must have heard this word brainstorming. The brainstorming is a technique wherein 4 to 5 or 6 people come together and we keep a subject and we'll start brainstorming about that particular subject, like whatever coming to our mind regarding that subject. We start jotting down our thoughts on a paper or post-it. So I can generate data points or informations regarding a subject or a topic or an issue through brainstorming also. I'll share one example where we used a brainstorming technique to generate data point. So before that, I will just give very simple definition of brainstorming, wherein brainstorming is discussing thoughts, informations, and ideas. It's a collaborative exercise and generates as many as thoughts possible. And multidisciplinary participants add more value and discussions could trigger new thoughts and articulate thoughts on basically like the more you discuss, the more cross-pollination happens, and people from a multidisciplinary field, they can obviously they will throw ideas from a different perspective. That's really good. And as I was saying that whatever thoughts you generate, you start putting on the post-it and you start populating that particular wall or that board. So let's take one example, okay? Here's a brainstorming session. So wherein we're going to discuss in this brainstorming what are the issues in our content creation process. So these guys are a part of UI UX company. So they are talking about their own organization, and they're talking about issues in our current creation process, like their own organization content creation process. What are those issues? They're kind of brainstorming that. Everybody throwing what the issue they think. And so here one person says, I'm not clear about who the stakeholders are for the project. So when project begins, I don't know who is the stakeholder. I just don't get a proper brief. I'll just get a blank brief. Just do it, sort of a thing. Another person said, approval takes centuries. It is pathetic. So he's really frustrated. So it just consumes a lot of time to get approval. Another person says, like, getting a visual inputs for the project takes a longer time. Maybe in their content generation, they need a lot of visual inputs along with the text and video. So generally, visuals are generated by their team, visual team or a design team. They take a lot of time to provide the images. And fourth one says that SEO team is very slow in providing keywords. They take a hell lot of time because most of this content is supposed to carry keywords, and the SEO team is responsible to provide keywords, but they generally take a lot of time. They don't provide keywords on time. Another point which came in this meeting was, most of the day I lack the motivation to write content. That's again individual person saying that maybe due to ambience, maybe uninteresting brief, or the boss behavior, or a team's members behavior. The atmosphere is really toxic. I don't feel motivated to write, okay? The office environment is noisy. I find it difficult to concentrate on my task. So again, like, it's a lot of people work, it's an open office, so it's always like a lot of noise. People are talking over the phone and many things are happening. So I feel distracted. I can't concentrate. Another person says that we don't have the freedom to run with our ideas. Another person says we all the time lose track of the given project. Deadlines are missed. So we don't have a specific content strategy. So when we start writing, there is no clear strategy. And we don't very often thoroughly plan. What we have written so far on the website is uninteresting. Seniors don't edit my content on priority basis, hence delay. So likewise, you can see the few more pointers. I don't have a senior manager for the content team. No formal requests were made for a content requirement, in the sense there is no clear briefing or requirement mails are sent. We have so many meetings in a day that it interrupts our flow. So good number of your time or their time get consumed in meetings, so they're unable to concentrate on their work. Lastly, we don't have a process available to follow for images and formatting needs. So generally when you're creating content, there's always a format, size, and images are required. So there is no proper documentation, so it's always kind of a struggle to get the data. Okay, let's go further. now if you see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, around 16 problem areas. You have to solve all the 16 problems. Isn't it a daunting task? Yes, of course it's a daunting task. How do we cluster these problems? Can you see some pattern among these problems? Okay, just look at, there is somewhat like delay, processes are not available, the place is noisy, I don't feel motivated. I don't feel motivated, it's a very personal thing. I can't concentrate because of the noisy atmosphere. So there is one bucket or one cluster, affinity cluster around that particular individual's centric issues. Another is a process planning issue. So I hope you started saying some of things come under planning and a process. Some of things come under the individual's motivation or individual's hindrances, what he or she is facing. So likewise, you can see some patterns there. So for example, I can see one pattern here is that delay related issues. Why it takes so much time? Because SEO team takes a lot of time to provide keywords, hence the content writing get delayed. There is a reason for a delay. Then approval takes a lot of time, takes centuries in the sense, it's kind of exaggeration. So again, there is a time delay issue. And getting a visual inputs, again, there's a delay issue. And seniors don't edit my content on a priority basis, hence delay. Like delay, maybe there are 4 or 5 which are coming under delay related issues. So I can make a cluster which is like delay related issues. So I can bring these 4 under that particular cluster. Another cluster I can have headline of that cluster is like structural issue or organization issue or organizing issue. Okay, the planning issue for that matter. So we all the time lose track of the given project in the sense they don't follow a structure. There is no process, there is no method, there is no protocol. So that structure is missing. And we don't have a process. Again, process is missing. No formal requests are made for a content requirement. Again, there is no proper briefing or a requirement letter. So again, structure is missing. We don't very often thoroughly plan. The planning is the issue. So the structural issue, a planning issue, become one more bucket. So like that, the individual who doesn't feel motivated, it's a noisy environment. Because of meetings, I get interrupted, my flow is broken. And so our website doesn't sound very interesting for me. Again, these are motivation related issue. So that could be another cluster. The last cluster could be planning related issues. We don't have a senior manager for the content team. So that is again, like as an organization, they haven't planned it properly. We don't have a freedom to run with our own ideas. That's again, you can put it in a personal as well as planning. Maybe they don't have accommodated that. We don't have a specific content strategy. That's of course a planning issue. So what happened? Our subject, like what we brainstorm on this particular issue, it's basically our brainstorming session started with asking the simple question, what are the issues in our content creation process? And we got like 16, 17 pointers, like everybody expressed their issues regarding this particular aspect. And of course, we had 16 problems, but if you look at majorly, we have only 4 problems because we used Affinity Cluster tool. So we're able to kind of streamline, we're able to see the broader worries or issues. So what are the broader issues? Delay issues, structural issues, motivation related issues, and planning issues. So as a solution provider, it's much easier to provide 4 solutions than providing 16 solutions. If you're able to provide solution keeping these 4 aspects in your mind, you're indirectly addressing all the 16 issues. Okay? So that's how clustering helps. Clustering helps you to kind of see all the problems, then start seeing pattern among those problems and cluster according to these major topics or major issues so that these are manageable problems. Solving 16 problems is next to impossible, but solving 4 problems is manageable. The clustering is going to help you to kind of see the pattern and see the larger picture and then addressing those issues and problems. And whenever we do brainstorming, we use brainstorming for 2 purposes. One is that collect those data points, then we cluster them. And once we cluster them, we use the brainstorming platform. They're asking that what could be the way forward? How do we solve delay issue? How do we solve structural issue? How do we motivate people? How do we plan better so that we don't face this problem in coming days or coming year or month? So why affinity clustering is important? Helps to identify issues and insights, reveal thematic pattern. So there are certain themes. So planning is the issue, or motivation is the issue. Facilitate productive discussions. So let's look at one more tool. Okay, this tool is again organizing tool. Here we're primarily using a visual data to extract a cluster and extract some meaning out of it. So I collected images. You can see that people wearing masks. Okay, this image are collected. Now we have lots of data point here. So let's look at what are those broad themes or a pattern you can see among these things. I kind of started thinking what could be those broad themes. That is when I started seeing there are 4 buckets I can see. One is that which is much more medical masks, which are like this monotone black and gray and a green color. Then another block I saw that there's a printed fabric with a lot of these floral pattern or some kind of pattern. Then I saw fashion designer or mask, like which has got fashion pattern, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, and Burberry. And lastly, I saw this ramp walker also using the mask. So clearly I can see ramp walking, high fashion, and designers mask versus medical masks. So I can see this pattern. This is how we clustered the clustering. Once you get a data, whether a visual data or word data, you try to cluster or bucket them. So once we bucket them, then the next step is all about ideating. How do you use the data to create solution? Of course, like we are going to see ideation in our tomorrow's session, but I'm just showing you how I use that data and bucketing, how that bucketing helped me to make some brand communication or visual communication. So in this bucket, I see 2 contrast areas. One is which is medical, which is need of the day. Another here, if you see high fashion. So high fashion is always, it's kind of fashion. It's not a need, but it's a luxury. So somewhere if I see that the first bucket, what you see, this is clearly need of the day, but this is kind of a luxury. It's kind of a want, this is kind of a need. 2 patterns I see. So therefore, I started seeing that, oh, that's a need, it's a want. Okay. And one interesting thing I saw in my study, that even though this particular mask has got all those medical layers inside this, it is as effective as a medical mask. So therefore, I came up with the headline like protection with style statement. Of course, it protects, but at the same time, it has got a style. It's not a monotone like your medical mask. Another, I just played with the logo, and here you can see how kind of that tongue-in-cheek which is coming. If I want to make some hoarding or something, or some advertisements, I can start playing with these elements, composing in a different way, and you can see that. So now you can see that how I collected data, how I bucketed, where that led to creation of advertising material. So again, you can see Burberry visual communication. In a last session, we saw that you collected data regarding an issue or a problem. And this session, we saw that how do you cluster those issues in 3 or 4 or 2 buckets, and then that clustering kind of helps you to see further solution patterns, and you try to address those clusters. So while you're addressing those clusters, you generate solutions. So as we saw in our last example, like how do I use visual inputs? I created 4 buckets, and when I looked at 4 buckets, I started seeing certain patterns, and from there I able to create advertising campaign. So I hope you're able to understand that how collecting data and clustering data and seeing pattern and applying your imagination and coming up with innovative brand solutions or communication solutions. In the tomorrow session, we will go deep into idea generation. How do we come up with new idea? Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the following session.